to Roger Dean and Rick Wakeman.
Sit down over there then?
Yeah, apparently.
But I don't, does this stretch over there? Oh, no, it's not good. Yeah, we'll sit down there then. Right. Oh. Right, that's alright. Now we're going to sit right back here. You want to bring the chairs forward there?
When we first considered this, I spoke to Rick's manager, Tom Dean, and Tom said, okay, it sounds a good idea, but ring Rick. You've got to make sure you coordinate your approach. You don't want to be moving each other's chess pieces. So I ring Rick to make sure we get our story straight. And having been told Rick will be very anxious about getting our story straight, and Rick said, oh, no, don't worry, it'll be fun. We'll sort it on the day.
So we start with sorting the seating now. There's 4 seats and 2 of us. That's good. Right. This is actually very unique because Roger and I have never done this before. We've been friends for, crikey, 42 years. And apart from when I plonked the piano bit at your exhibition in Australia, we've never done this before, have we? That's why the other sofa's here. We thought we'd just go this way. We met 1971. Remember the month?
I remember we met at Ambition.
We did.
And
September.
the first time I met you and talked to you alone was at your house in London, North London.
Yeah, I was in Harrow. I had a little terraced house in Harrow.
Yeah.
Which I really love. It's only a little tiny 2 up, 2 down terraced house, which I love very much. Yes, his manager was a guy called Brian Lane, and he said, he came to my little terraced house and he said, don't worry, by the time I finish with you, you'll be somewhere very special. And within a year, I was in a small flat in Wandsworth. Sorry, yeah, Adverson.
But to be fair, he hadn't finished with you then.
No, that's very true. Brian Lane. Deal a Day Lane he was known as, wasn't he, Brian? He was actually probably the best manager Yes ever had. In a strange way, wasn't he, Rog?
He was good company. I don't know if he was a good businessman.
No, he was good for himself. He was brilliant for himself. I mean, his house was full of like Rembrandts and Monets and things. It was, and we had nothing. He was brilliant. I remember there was a situation in the band. John, in the summer when we were on tour, John, if it was sunshine, he would just go by the pool. He'd have to be by the pool. Chris was permanently asleep. Chris was always asleep, kind of bed. And I can remember going to a hotel. This was 1971, something like that, late 71. And we arrived at the reception, a little Holiday Inn, but it had a swimming pool in the middle. And Brian said, "What are you all going to do?" And John said, I'm going to go and lie by the pool. And Chris said, I'm going to go and lie on my bed. And Brian Lane said, and I'm going to go and lie on the phone. Which just about some Brian Lane. Yeah. There you go. But yes, it was our Vision Studios, and I wasn't sure whether it was Steve Howard brought you with, but it wasn't. It was Phil Carson, wasn't it?
Phil Carson, yeah. He's like anybody trying to get work. I was going around record companies and seeing bands trying to get a job, and I went to see Phil Carson.
Who was the head of Atlantic Records
in Europe.
And do you know what he was before then?
He was a guitarist from Sandy Shore.
And close. He was a bass player with Dusty Springfield, the Springfield.
Dusty Springfield, yeah.
But they sacked him because he could only play one note. And when he got and it was Chris who got him the job at Atlantic Records, and he was a baked beans salesman. I'm serious. He sold baked beans.
Well, I'm seriously grateful for Phil because
you like beans.
I like Phil.
Yeah.
He was very enthusiastic, and he said, trouble is, I've only got 2 bands, Yes and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. It's a struggle, wasn't it?
So he introduced me to you guys, which, for me at least, worked out really well. I had a great time.
Well, it worked out great well. Now, I can remember you coming in and showing us something. I'd never seen anything like it before. And then you told me to hold it up the other way. But it was interesting because, in all seriousness, we were looking for something that we wanted to associate with the music. We wanted something that we could say, yes, that's depicts Yes music visually. And it was quite astonishing when Phil brought you in, and we saw that because it was exactly what all of us had in mind.
Yeah, it seemed to work well. I'm just going to tell an anecdote about the first day I visited Rick because it relates to the seriousness of the work and everything. Just a quick side story. John Kalubner, who was putting together Aisha's first album, when I showed the band the logo I designed, John Kalubner said, no, this is crap. I can't read it. And I tried to explain to him that if you're going to try and read it, you're already in trouble. You have to recognise it instantly. If you're putting one letter after another, you've lost it. And this is very true of logos. It's how logos work. You need instant recognition, and it needs to be memorable. Reading it is way down second place. And the same is very true of signatures. I've often been, tonight it's a very relevant topic because people have maybe brought things in for Rick to sign, whatever. The signature is a very relevant thing, and it's a kind of a magical representation of somebody. And the very first time I visited Rick's house, he was sitting in the garden, and I was taking pictures for the Fragile album. He had a dog then.
I had a little dog, yeah, because everybody in the Fragile booklet put a picture of their wives. So I put a picture of my dog.
He was surrounded in pieces of paper where he was practicing signature. And he hadn't met some amazing cultural guru. His bank manager said, you shouldn't read a signature, you should recognise it.
Yeah.
And Rick's signature apparently could be read.
Well, my writing was very phonetic. At school I'd been taught phonetic writing. And that's when I first joined yesterday. I did all the phonetic writing, that's all I did. And then the bank manager said, you can't do that, it's too easy to be forged. And I remember doing the new signature and Brian Lane saying to me, is that your new signature? I said, yeah. He went, oh, shit. And it's probably accounted why I didn't know him very much in the first few years. But it's absolutely true. A signature is something that should be recognisable. You look at some of the most famous signatures and they're not recognised. But you do recognise for what they are. You know, and you're right about Asia. Well, it is reasonable because you know what it is. You look at it and you say, well, that's the Asia logo.
You know, if people sign things on a very regular basis, their signatures get faster and faster and simpler.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever signed?
I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, come on. Come on, Rog, come on. There must be something you signed. Something weird you signed. Come on. You can tell us. Come on, there must be something. You must have been asked, oh, Rog, can you sign this for me?
It's same as you. I've signed innumerable body parts.
Oh, brilliant.
I mean, not just blank sheets, though. You know, often these were fantastically tattooed. A number of Yes logos have been tattooed.
And you signed them on the body parts?
Sometimes, depends.
It's interesting when you get strange things to sign.
I did get asked by somebody after signing something, they said, can you draw me the Yes logo? And I did the little box one. They said, no, I want the classic Yes logo. And I said, I can't remember how it goes. What do you mean? I've done that thousands of times. I said, well, you've done it thousands of times. I only ever did it once, and I can't remember how it goes.
I signed a weird thing. I was at Southend Apollo, signing afterwards. There was a queue of people, and it was quite interesting because at the time when I was doing like countdown and things like that, we used to get suddenly got quite a few, shall we say, elderly people used to come along to the show. So apart from people who like the music, you'd suddenly get some quite senior citizens that would come along who were quite interesting in their own way. I remember one show, there was a very elderly lady came up to me, and because after the countdown, I thought I just told silly stories. They had no idea what else I did. She said, "They had no idea you played the piano." And I said, "Oh, right." She said, "You're quite good." I said, "Thank you very much." It's true. And she said, "Have you made any discs?" I said, 136. She said, "Oh, have you sold them all yet?" But that's, it was at the show at Southend Apollo, there was a queue of people, and I'm signed, and there was what appeared to be a mother and daughter a little way down the line, which was fine, and behind were two very, very elderly ladies. And I thought, countdowners, bless them, I'll have a little word when they come up. Which is a true story. And the mother and daughter came up, and they were mother and daughter as well, and I'm signing away. And I said to them, "How old are you?" She said, 19. I said, "I wouldn't have thought this was your cup of tea." She said, "Oh, no, I like a lot of the stories, and I do like some of the music." I went, "Oh, great." And she said, "Go on, Mum, ask him." She went, "No." She said, "Ask him, Mum." She said, "I'm not going to. Ask him." "No." And I said, "Ask me what?" And she said, "Well, you met my mum about 20 years ago." She said, "No, nothing like that." I said, "Nothing like that, nothing like that." She said, "Mum came to one of your rock concerts." I said, "Did you?" She said, "Yeah, I came to see the English rock concert." I said, "Oh, glad you enjoyed it." She said, "Loved it." She said, "You signed a pair of my mum's knickers for her." I said, "Did I?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Mum wondered for old time's sake, you sign another pen?" I said, "Yeah, of course I will." So she opened her handbag, took out a felt tip pen. I'm waiting for her to take out a pair of knickers. No, undoes the belt, drops the jeans. And I'm now standing looking at a very attractive mid-30-year-old woman wearing little else but a thong. Well, I did the best I could, Roger. I had a job getting my middle name in, but it's Christopher. But this is absolutely true. What happened got really silent in the rest of the queue while I'm signing this. And the two little old ladies behind, one turned to the other. She went, "Oh, Edith, we don't have to do that, do we?" Anyway, where were we? Signing things. Your signature. Now, here's the strange thing. You do all these wonderful logos and all the wonderful drawings, and your signature is incredibly readable.
Yeah, I must tell you a story about that. Bank manager story, same as yours. In the mid-70s, late 70s, I was having unbelievable difficulties with my bank manager. Not because we had no money, I just think they were just practicing for the period when bank manager awkwardness reached the height that it does today. But at the time, every time I went abroad, I got into trouble with the bank, mostly through Mandy, who had more trouble than me. And after one particular series of crises with the bank, I went in to see my bank manager, and we had a row about who signs my checks. And I said, "Well, there's three people. There's me, my accountant, and Mandy. We weren't married at the time." He said, "No." I said, "Yes." He said, "No." I said, "Look, she's been doing it for months, for years." Anyway, I know Mandy will have a different take on this. I go back and I said, "That bloody stupid bank manager swears blind that you don't have a what do you call it?
Authority
to sign my checks. You've been doing it for years, haven't you?" She said, "Yeah." He said, why don't the bloody bank? I mean, how does he not know? And then I thought of it, and I looked at Mandy, and I said, you haven't been signing my cheques yet. Well, Mandy is a very logical person, and it's my cheques. She doesn't sign her name, does she?
Doesn't sign her name? Oh, wonderful.
Can't be trusted back.
No. You know, you said you were wandering around record companies. So who was the first one to give you a job?
The first cover I did was for CBS. That was I did the seating for Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, and they asked me to do an album cover for a band they had called The Gun, which, by the way, for a very brief period that year, John Anderson was a singer.
Was he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Before Yes. I didn't meet him, but he was a singer for them.
What did you make of Yes when you first met us? We haven't rehearsed any of that. I'm just intrigued to know. We decided that we were just going to treat this as if the pair of us were having a coffee and a chat. And we'd ask each other things that we've never asked before. So, come on, what did you make of us then?
I hadn't heard any of Fragile.
No.
You were just in the studio. Phil Carson had given me the album with the worm.
Oh yeah, that was the Yes album.
Yeah, and I have to say, I thought that was unbelievable, incredible. And, you know, Yes, we're doing complicated things, but at the time, I was listening to stuff like Terry Riley and not John Cage, but I was intrigued at the doors they were opening to other stuff. What about you? What did you think?
What do you think of us as individuals? Because we're a bit of a strange bunch, really, to put it. Come on, so what did you think? Let's start with John.
Well, there is a wonderful description of Yes as being three of the greatest musicians in the world, one rock star and one Messiah.
That's brilliant. I mean, John, we were asked on an American TV programme, we were all there. I was asked to describe John in one sentence. And John loves it, he uses it in his stuff. And I said that John was the only person I knew who was trying to save this planet while living on a totally different one. Do I like that? I use that.
Yeah, I was going to say, when Rick first told me that story, and that I know he'd been repeating, I said, for Christ's sake, Rick, what if John hears that? He said, John knows that. He tells it more often than me.
He does, yeah. Well, so what do you think of because it was Bill then, Bill Bruford.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And Steve.
Yeah, incredible.
And Chris.
Yeah.
That leaves one other, doesn't it?
John and I got on occasionally.
No, me. Because I was the only drinker, wasn't I? At the time.
I didn't realise there was a world championship in drinking. And I had met the world champion.
I was good. I was really good at it. But it was very interesting for me being in a band where it was all sort of nut roasts and lettuce and things, and I was more pork and brandy and beer and curry. Although I have to say, I was always worried when we were travelling in the same cars about the after effects of curry, but trust me, it's got nothing compared to a nut roast. You wish I hadn't come now, hadn't you?
I can repeat this story. I suppose before Yes became really big, they did a brief tour of England, and I suppose it would have been 71.
It was November 71. No, October, November 71, yeah.
Yeah, and we were going from London to Manchester in a convoy of 3 or 4 Daimler cars. And Rick was in a car with very long blonde hair down to his waist. Steve was in the same car, very long blonde hair down to his waist. And Alan was with you.
Yeah,
very long blonde hair down to his waist.
No, he had a very long blonde down to his waist.
And I remember that as your car pulled out, we were still in the motorway cafe, and all the girls in the cafe were looking out of the window saying, "Who's that? Who's that?" And Brian Lane said, "Princess Anne." Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you, when I was with Straws, was before Yes, and we just started to get a little modicum of success, and it was the days when everybody was in the transit vans. You all stopped at the Blue Boar on the M1 on the way home at Leicester, just after Leicester Forest, midnight order bands, and we just, I think the album got like 29 in the charts. So we were doing the bigger folk clubs then, so we started to feel a bit Jack the Laddish. And I can remember going into the Blue Boar. It was gone midnight, and we're in the line and get your egg, beans, and chips, whatever. And got to the, I can remember this. We got to the end of the counter where you pay, and the girl looked up. She went, "Oh, it's you." So I go, "Yeah, possibly." She said, "It is, isn't it?" Yeah. Oh, I said, "Can I tell the other guys?" "Yeah, you far away." And she pulled back the old shutter thing behind all the girls. She said, girls, look. She said, "It is." She said, "Is it?" She went, "Yeah." She said, "It's Jethro Tull." And I said, no, it's not. She said, "Well, who are you then?" I said, "Straw." She said, "Never heard of you. That's beans, chips and egg. That's like 84p. I'll bring you down." So I was Princess Anne. I had no idea I was Princess Anne. Or was John Princess Anne?
I think it was you.
Oh, shit. Okay. So,
Rick said we'd never done this before, but I'm just going to recount a story of when we kind of did. There was...
must have been pissed.
I told Rick I had an exhibition in Sydney in Australia at the same time they were playing. And Rick said, "Oh, fantastic. Tell the gallery to get a grand piano and I'll come and play." So I told them, and they were so excited, couldn't believe. But they said, "Can we publicise it?" And I said, "Well, you better coordinate with the SSPR." But in any event, it made no matter because the gallery was packed. Rick turned up and he was playing away. And there was a film crew in there filming it.
Oh, God, I remember.
Anyway,
yeah.
Rick was playing, and he was managing to play fantastically well with one hand, and he was waving me over, and I was wandering around like a lost sheep, wondering what I was supposed to be doing. Come over. And Rick started whispering below the level I could hear, but I could just about tell. He sort of grabbed my jacket like this, pulled me down, and starts whispering this incredibly dirty joke. I'm trying to keep straight face, but I can barely hear it. But it didn't matter, because he's told it straight into the microphone.
I was deported, wasn't I? Yeah. I'm glad. Yeah, we are. Yeah, it was slightly different because we didn't really have this conversation and things back there, but it's the same thing here. It said, it gave us a nice Model D Steinway 9-foot grand piano. How long's Mrs. Mills been dead? When on it.
I'm going to tell you a bit more about that. We were talking on and off on that tour, and Rick was bemoaning the fact that he hadn't had a game of golf for years, or for months, for weeks, whatever.
No, I was, desperately on golf.
He's a big fan of golf.
Yeah.
And I said, "Look, you guys are going to Hawaii in a few days. I'm going to Hawaii tomorrow. I've got a great friend in Hawaii who's a fanatical golf player. He'll take me for a game of golf." My friend was Hank Rogers, who's the publisher of Tetris, and I told him about Rick, and he said, "Great." And in due course, Rick turned up in Hawaii, and we were sitting in a cafe on the seafront, just by Waikiki Beach, and Hank and Rick were making all the plans to play golf in the morning. And this went on for about an hour, which is no hardship, sitting on the beach in Hawaii. They planned what equipment they used, where they'd meet, what they would do, blah, 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 and it went on. And in the end, they made all the arrangements necessary. Hank goes, "Well," turns to me and he said, "Roger, I'm afraid that blows your trip tomorrow to the volcano." And Rick goes, "What?" Hank said, "Yeah, I was going to go to see the volcano with Roger tomorrow." Whoa, wait a minute. I'd rather see a volcano than play golf.
We did. We went to a volcano and burnt all our shoes. Do you remember? It was bloody unbelievable. It was a real volcano. I mean, all the lava was going into the sea, wasn't it? And it was just unbelievable. And it was very strict where you couldn't go. And Hank said, "We're going there." And it was honestly, it was unbelievable because like the crust is breaking and there's just molten lava underneath, and it just melted our shoes, didn't it? And I remember you saying to me, "I don't feel at all safe out," and hoping for some nice thing for me, and I said, and I don't either. And it got pitch black. Do you remember? And all we could see was these glowing red bits which you're trying to tread over to get back to. Cured my constipation. I'd had a lot of trouble up until then.
Actually, we had a great day because Hank actually took us around the pathways in the jungle to see the crater, everything, to buy time until it got dark, because you couldn't do this in daylight. You needed to be dark to see where the lava was flowing through the crust.
It's like marriage, really, isn't it? It's got to be.
It was scary because we were walking up about a mile of lava flow.
We were, yeah, we did about a mile into the lava. Yeah, interesting.
It did literally get hotter and hotter, and it was
like marriage.
and it was crumbling too, because every
like
time.
Marriage. Funny thing, marriage, isn't it?
I'm going to tell him another story about you.
Not about my marriages.
About Rick's marriage.
No, I don't about marriage. No, I don't mind marriage. Marriage is fine. It's the divorces that get me. It's the reasons that women give for divorcing you. I find it astonishing. I mean, my second wife.
You're just trying to change the subject.
No, my second wife divorced me purely on the grounds that I wouldn't open the car door for her. I mean, actually, I panicked and swam to the surface, but that's just a minor. Sorry, you can't carry on. Where were you? Sorry, mate, you're on about. You're going to tell the story.
No,
we should be talking about your art here. This is what we should be talking about.
This is a little bearing on it. We're at an airport, and there was a big delay, hours delay, and I was talking about Rick's interest in gospel music, and I said that one of the things I wished I could do was design a Gothic cathedral. Nothing modest, right? And Rick said, "Hey, I know the person you should talk to," and he said he'd set up a meeting for me when we got to Anaheim. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And he set up the meeting for 8 o'clock in the morning with a group of elders from this church. There was 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
And I don't have Rick's experience with church. So I go down at 8 o'clock on time for this breakfast meeting with these 4 gentlemen, and they were talking as if on a regular basis, hourly basis even, they converse with God. Oh, you know, I had to make up my mind about this. I talked to God, he suggested I do this. Another one said, well, yeah, I talked to God and he suggested I do that. And I was completely intimidated by the nature of their contacts. And this went on for about half an hour, then eventually Rick turned up. And Rick is not, what's the word?
Normal.
Yeah, Rick's not normal. No, I was going to say he's not disrespectful. That he sits down and he's quiet for a few minutes, he's listening to the conversation, and then he says, I talked to the devil the other day. Oh shit. Yeah, the devil said to me, I'm a bit worried about you, Rick. You don't seem to be scared of me. And I'm wondering how this is going to go down with these guys, because they're all leaning forward, listening. What's he going to say? Yeah. And yet, Rick said, yeah, I'm not scared of you. Well, the devil says, I'm concerned to find out why, because that's not the normal way of things. And Rick said, well, I've been married to your sister for 13 years. I thought that would be the end of our conversation, but in fact, they laughed, didn't they?
They did, yeah. Yeah, they did. Yeah. But you actually went on to design this church thing, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
For the Korean, was it Koreans? it South Koreans, North Koreans?
No. There was a conversation about Korea, but this was I did a church for a congregation based in.
In your own time.
It's near Palm Springs. It was where they had Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree's National Monument.
Eastbourne. Anybody from Eastbourne in? I'm surprised you got the strength to lift your hand. A very good close friend of mine lives in Eastbourne. He told me, I thought it was very funny. He said that Bournemouth was where old people go to die, and Eastbourne was where their parents went. Sorry, carry on, mate. Oh, you're done. That was your bit, was it? That's it. Well, shall I play somewhere where you think of something else to say? All right, I won't end the subject. Shall I?
Yeah.
The nearest thing we got to a coordinated proposal for what we do is that if Rick plays piano, I'll show slides, but I'm not going to talk, just show pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the plan?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, what sort of pictures you got then?
It doesn't matter that you'll have your back to them. That's good.
Okay. I won't see these pictures then. Right, okay. I'll get up then and look. Oh, that's a nice piano, isn't it? Yeah. It's wood. It's been tuned. Right, what shall I do? I've got I'll do a yes bit. I'll do. One of the interesting things was. Oh God. Do you want to show a silent movie, actually? Yeah. Well, you won't be short of firewood this year, that's for sure. Reached a verdict. This is one of. It was very interesting when I joined it. Everybody, quite seriously, had a job in Yes. And one of the secrets was to actually to find your job. When I first joined in July 1971, the interesting thing was that when the first rehearsals that we had, everybody was bringing little bits of music. And they were all in different keys and different times, using different tempos. And I'm listening to all these different bits and things that are coming forward. And it was actually for Heart of the Sunrise, that's how that started. And it was Bill who said, right, I said, all these different bits, different keys, what happens next? He said, well, that's your job, that's why we got you in the band, because you've had all the classical training, you put it all together, get the keys to work and all that. And it was great to find, right, okay, I can enjoy doing this. And one of the things was as well, when somebody came up with the theme of, remember when the theme came up for And You and I, that was, the original chord structure was horrible. And I said, there's lots of different ways of doing that. And one of the jobs was to go and, for me, which was great fun, I recorded about 30 different chord sequences that you could do And You and I to. And then we chose the ones that we wanted to use, which are the ones that we used on the track. Interestingly enough, about 6 years ago, I found the quarter-inch tape with the original, all the different chord changes on. And it was really quite interesting because I played them to John just before we went out and did a tour together. And I said, listen to these. And there was one that we went, why didn't we use that one? So what I'll do, I'll play a little acoustic version of And You and I, and but what I'll do the chord sequence that you've never heard before. And the interesting thing about that is that you won't know whether I'm playing it right or not because you've never heard it. But trust me, this is what it is. You show lots of rude pictures. Yeah. You got any pictures of yourself naked at all, Rob? Want to buy some? What are you doing, Rog? We've finished. I've done this bit. Right, okay. I'll tell you a few things about Rog. There's some interesting things that I can tell you that perhaps in one of the initial album covers that Rog did, Fragile, Close to the Edge, Yes songs, he did Reload, absolutely fantastic. And I left the band in '74, in May 1974, and rejoined again in November '76 to go over to Switzerland. To rejoin Yes to do the album Going for the One. And if ever there was an album that epitomised how I thought Yes should be, it was the Going for the One album with tracks like Wakeman, which I just loved to bits. But my big disappointment, Rog, was that I mean obviously a lot of things had been decided or whatever before I went back to the band, but you weren't doing the cover, and we ended up with a cover with a guy's arse on it, really, which was just unbelievable. I mean, what that had to do with Yes was, well, I mean, I know some people might say it summed it up, really, but for example, but it was the most. It bore no. The thing for me was that what you did. I'm talking as a mate as well. What you did, cover it, to me, it was music. It was part of the music. It spoke Yes music. What we were doing. You know, a cover of a few ridiculous buildings with a guy's arse on the front didn't cover the mentality of one of the two of the guys, but it didn't cover what the music was. And I didn't know, literally, until earlier today, that you had actually done a cover for it, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And I never knew.
No. But you knew I came to Montreux.
I didn't know you came to Montreux. We didn't meet in Montreux.
I came out when you recorded Going for the One in Montreux.
Yeah.
I came out for a few days, and
I don't remember you coming out, if you'll pardon the expression. No, I truthfully don't.
Yeah, well, I did. And I got there, and John was working at the easel and explaining to me really what the cover was going to look like. And I thought I'd done the best cover so far for Yes.
I've just seen it the first time. It was brilliant.
So I didn't really have the patience and the tact that I should have had to talk with John about it. Sometimes John and I got on really well. We got on really well for the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman Howe project.
Yeah.
And other times, it was a bit more difficult. I mean, there have been many times when Yes have gone to see other people to do covers, and nevertheless, I've still managed to do nearly 20 for them. But I did get interviewed once by a journalist who was very indignant on my behalf, and he said, "But surely you feel like a sixth member of the band. You must be outraged that you're not asked to do this cover." And I said, "Well, I was asked, but you know what? What makes me feel more like a member of Yes than anything is coming and going."
I can answer that, yes. No, you're dead right. But it's very interesting when I look at. I mean, now I've seen that cover. I mean, how brilliant would it be if Ryan or whoever owns it now just got rid of the arse and put that cover on? Wouldn't that be great? It would just make the album exactly what it what it should be. And then there was the album that came after it, Tormato, which was the most ridiculous cover. I mean, the album was meant to be called Yes Tour. There's a place in Cornwall or Devon called Yes Tour, small mountain, and it was before the days of blue screen. So they carted us all off down there to have our picture taken standing on Yes Tour, which is basically a rock in the middle of nowhere. It could have been a rock anywhere. So we stood on this rock and they took various photos and whatever, and we were recording in Rack Studios, which was Mickey Mouse old studios. And we were in there and we were very excited, or we were meant to be excited. We were told by Brian Lane, the manager, we were to be very excited because the cover was coming in for Yes Tour. And they came, I can remember to this day, at the end of where the desk was, they put this easel up and they got a cloth over the painting or the picture, whatever it was that they'd done. And it wasn't a painting, it was the photo. And, it was like a painting they'd done for the photo. And they took off the cloth and it was just revolting. It was just we just all looked at it. I went, well, that's just horrible. It's just really horrible. And yes, of course, we're still very veggie then, very vegetarian. And there was a big bowl of salad, and I picked up a tomato and threw it at it, and it splattered all over it. And the guys who brought it in said, "There isn't a copy. This is it. This is that," and it's now got tomato all over it. And it was actually Brian Ada who said, "Well, we won't call it Yes Tour anymore. We'll call it Tormato." And we laid it flat, and they took it away, and that's how it became Tormato. And it's an abysmal cover. It's only fractionally better than the arse. But I hated that. I got to tell you, Rog, I hated those colours. I really did. And what would you have done for? Well, it wouldn't have been Tormato then. It would have been called Yes Tour. What would you have done? Do you know?
Well, I know what I would have done for going for the one because I did it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about Tormato until it came out, so I had no thoughts. But I must say two things. First of all, Storm, who did both those covers, is a brilliant guy. I don't think he did his best work on those two, but I must tell you, he did get his revenge on Brian. Years later, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe, the album where I said I did get on with John while that was being in its conceptual stages, and we made a video, at least I should say Storm made a video, and I was tangentially involved in it. And I remember... You were what involved in it? Tangentially.
Tangentially. Did you just make that up? Is there really such a word as tangentially?
I'm good at that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, there was a sequence that wasn't in the storyboard of a gymnast. We used the gymnast covered in camouflage, you may remember this.
Oh, I do, yes.
And I remember that we put all these incredible camouflage patterns all over the gymnast, and I do remember spending 4 hours painting Bill Bruford at the studios, making a video.
You painted Bill?
Bill got painted. It took 4 hours, and he had the same makeup as the gymnast. So there was supposed to be a seamless transition from the gymnast to Bill. And at the end of this time, Bill was sitting there, and he'd been unbelievably patient while he'd been painted bright red with black patterns on his face. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, what do you do now?" And I said, "Well, I go round to the rest of the guys and I get £5 off each of them." But in the filming in Spain, it was filmed in Spain, Storm put a sequence in where he got one of the gymnasts to swim naked in this male gymnast to swim naked in this lake, and it was not part of the video.
Was it
part of the video.
Was it the arse off the cover?
That was the point. he told Brian that this was a key sequence in the video, but he never told any of us about it. And there was the most awful row
It was.
with
I mean, it was
Brian.
nuts. Yeah, but first of all, I mean, you've got this naked guy swimming,
Yeah.
and it was, and the trouble was he kept slowing up because he kept saying he was dragging weed, and it was like a real problem for him, and going around in circles and things like that. Oh, it was horrendous. I tell you something very serious. They're going for the one cover with the anybody know the cover with the bare bump. When it came out, the Americans wouldn't have it, and on the billboards they painted shorts on the guy. That's absolutely true. They painted shorts so they wouldn't have a bare bum.
Well, I do know Brian was frantic about it. He said that everyone thought John was gay as a consequence of that.
They did. Everybody did for a long time. John, people thought that John was gay. Yeah, that's why we gave him his own dressing room.
Well, you can imagine Brian how sensible he was when there was this sequence in the video, and I after just the most awful row that went on for hours and hours and hours, we were putting the finishing touches to the video, and I was saying to Storm, what on earth are you arguing with Brian about? He said, it's about the nude scene. I said, Storm, that's not in the video. It never was in the video. Even you agreed it was no intention of it being in the video. What are you arguing about? He said, yeah, but Brian doesn't know that. And I don't think he should get away with thinking he's in control.
Really? Wow, I never knew that. Wow. So, what were the next ones you did? You did, well, there was a few sort of compilations like Yesterdays and all that kind of thing, weren't there, that came around?
I did Classic Yes, and then I didn't do anything again until after the 90125 and Big Generator era.
Yeah. Yeah, you came back then. Keys to Ascension.
Did you tell me the story about the journalist who...
Oh, oh boy, the journalist. Yeah, not sure I can tell this story really. I was at that time living on the Isle of Man, and I'd come back to the band. I was doing lots of different things, so I had to fly back at weekends, which was a nightmare because you'd take the hedgehopper down from San Luis Obispo where John lived, and because that's where we were rehearsing in an old bank, and then go down to Los Angeles, fly to London, get the flight to Ireland, and then back again. It was a nightmare. So what the lads used to do was, it was time to do press at that time, and it was John Brewer. Who was
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yet another manager, yes, and he used to organise the press things. And I'll shorten this story as it goes on, but John, but what he used to do was he used to say, okay guys, here's the press interviews that have come in for people to do while Rick's away. Just let us know what you want to do, what you don't want to do. Say like Steve, guitar player, yeah, fine. Alan, Sticks magazine or whatever, and that kind of thing. Chris, bass player, whatever. And John was really strange with interviews. He either really loved doing them or he just didn't want to do them at all. I can understand that. And it was also weird sometimes the things he would do and the things that he wouldn't do, which is what makes John quirky and really quite special, I suppose. John Brewer said, oh John, there's a request from Los Angeles Times. He said, don't want to talk to them. I said, why not? He said, don't want to talk to them. He said, always. Rolling Stone said, no, don't want to do it. He said, well, you want to do this one, the San Luis Obispo Journal, which was the little local rag that the guy, it was one guy who ran it, and it's a tiny little hick town, San Luis Obispo, and he used to like press up like 100 of these newspapers, no news because nothing ever happened there, and they go at the end of the street for people to take, but nobody ever took any because there was never any news. And it was a very green newspaper because you used to take all the ones that were left there, which was all of them, at the end of the week, and then they'd be mashed up for the next week's issue. And he said to John, San Luis Obispo Journal, John said, I'll do that. which sort of stunned everybody. Anyway, I go back to it and I come back. And there's only one little, it's like a B&B in San Luis Obispo. And I arrive back there at midnight and Fish is still at Chris Squire with John Brewer, the manager. And I said, what are you two still doing that? They said, we've got to talk to you. And I said, why? They said, got a problem. I said, what's the problem? They said, you know the interview John was doing? I said, well, the one for the, it was a local rag. They said, yeah, he did it. And I said, oh yeah. And I'd been away for about a week, I suppose, about a week and a half or so. And I said, so what about it? They said, it's a nightmare. And Chris said, the guy came in, he said, you know what John's like? He'll either talk a donkey's hind leg off or he'll be monosyllabic. And he said he was in one of his monosyllabic moves. He said, this young lad came in, who runs the paper all on his own. He's got 4 notepads, 3 technicals, 100 pencils, just in case one breaks. He's all excited. And he said to John, so, hey John, do you think Yes Music's likely to change? Because instead of recording in the big city, you're now recording in a small town? And John went, maybe. Oh, right. He said, do you think that this will have an influence on the way you record in future? No. And Chris said, I felt sorry for the guy. I could see him going, well, that's the front page, go on, that's the middle page. And he said, it's not work. He said, and then it happened. He said to John, so you met your fiancée here, who's now married to the lovely Jane, who's from San Luis Obispo, right? Yeah, he said, did you meet her here in San Luis Obispo? I said, no, not the first time. He said, well, where did you first meet? He said, Atlantis. He said, you mean Atlanta, Georgia? He said, no, lost city of Atlantis. So she was a mermaid and I was an underwater goblin. Now I'm wetting myself. And John Brewer said, it's not funny, look at this. And he held up the paper and there's a picture of John and Jane. And he's got, we first met in the lost city of Atlantis. She was a mermaid and I was an underwater goblin. Drink and drugs have never affected me. And he said, we've got to keep this away from John. And he says, and I always used to have breakfast with John because we're really, really close friends. And he said, when he comes up to have breakfast, he said, don't mention it. He said, we're hoping that for a couple of weeks he'll have forgotten all about it. So breakfast in the morning, I'm sitting there and John arrives and everybody else is in there and John comes. He always calls me Wake Up. And he came and said, how's your trip, Wake Up? I said, I was a bit nuts, but it's all right, not bad, thanks. So he sat down, we're talking away, and John says to me, he said, I did the article for the local paper. I said, oh, did you? And there's John Brewer and Chris and Steve behind going. I went, oh, right. He said, have you seen it? And I said, no, I haven't seen it. He said, oh, I'll show it to you. I've got 3 copies here. And he took it out and he said, it's a pleasure to speak to a journalist that actually writes what you say. That's brilliant. I do love John for that. I mean, John does. He's got this most wonderful. In all seriousness, he has got this most wonderful imagination that sometimes takes over from the reality of the world he's living in, doesn't it? And it's a bit difficult when you're in Tesco's, but it doesn't. But I love him to bits. We're such good friends. Anyway, go on. What else? What are we talking about? I don't have a clue. Oh, paintings, your paintings. Remember the first one you ever sold?
Well, that was fairly recent.
About an hour ago, wasn't it? Yeah. No, seriously, do you remember the first painting that you ever sold?
I do, yeah. It's fairly recent.
You sold paintings before. Oh, the originals, you mean?
Yeah.
You always held on to your originals, didn't you? If you'll pardon the expression. You held on to them, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the first album cover?
No, the first... Oh, God. You know, you get these brushes and paint, and you do things like that,
yourself,
and you do like you did my cover over there for Return to the Central. As you paint the back. Do you remember the very first one you actually sold? Not as a print, but the actual original.
I do, yeah.
This may come as a bit of a surprise. I was hoping you might elucidate.
Well, there you go. I never wanted to sell pictures, and you know, sort of egotistical thing. People would. I remember being interviewed by somebody saying, "Why don't you sell pictures?" And I said, "Well, if I had the money, if I was rich enough, these would be the ones I'd buy. But there did come a time when there just wasn't room, and I was advised strongly that it might not be a bad idea to sell one or two.
What was the first one you sold?
Hank, the guy you met in Hawaii, he bought a painting that I literally finished the day Freya was born. It was called Freya's Castle, and he bought that in 1987.
What about the first sort of album cover that you sold, the original of?
I don't know if I can remember that.
I'm glad I asked.
I think it was Uriah Heep one. Yeah.
Did you feel strange? That's not mine anymore. I'm not going to see that anymore. That's
Yeah, it was very disturbing to do. And it's both incredibly flattering that someone will pay money for it, and it's very strange parting with it. It's not, you know, one of the beauties of doing prints is that no matter how much effort there is, there's not just one. And selling an original painting was hard. It's very hard. I'm surprised artists find it easy to do. As I say, it was. I was humbled by the process, but also reluctant. Yeah.
You still the same?
Sorry?
It still feels the same when you sell an original?
Yeah. Always. Yeah.
Is there one particular original that not for all the tea in China you would part with?
That I'll never part with?
You'll never part with.
There's a few that I would probably find hardest, yeah.
Any chance of... It's like pulling teeth here, isn't it?
Relayer. I think Relayer is a tough one for me. You weren't on Relayer, unfortunately.
No.
But
I had to review Relayer for Radio 1, would you believe?
yeah.
They asked me to review it.
And?
Well, I said to them, I said, you know, I'm up for hiding for nothing here. Because if I say I don't like it, you'll say, well, that's sour grapes. If I say I do like it, they'll say, well, that's because they're still your mates. But the truth of the matter was, I was really pleased with that album. I was really, really pleased because I left after Tales from Toby's Graphic Go-Kart because I didn't like the direction of the music. I didn't like that way that it was going. And being in any band is give and take. And I thought, I haven't got anything to give to this, and the music for Relay was starting to get put together. And I thought, if this is the way that it's going, I've got very little to give to this. And when I heard the album, I was really pleased because it was exactly the direction that it was going in after Tales from Tropical Oceans. If I'd have heard the album and it had come out like Going for the One, I'd have been gutted because it's what I would have wanted to play. So I said, I'm so pleased with the album because it is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I couldn't have offered anything to it. But it was a good cover. It was because it was the first time you'd used that different coloured, well, I say, base of a background, wasn't it?
For me, it was. Yeah, I mean, people ask about the colours and things in that because it's virtually no colour at all. In fact, you know, I describe it as painted with dirty water. For all the fact there was no colour, I thought it was a very powerful piece. But I think for both of us, Tales was very problematic because Tales was the first time we managed to put absolutely everything together on tour. I mean, it's the first time Yes went on tour with all the graphics, all the tour merchandising, the stage. It was the first time we did it all. And
well, the stage, it was fantastic, but I mean, you needed sat-nav to find your equipment. I mean, there was stuff hidden all over. It was amazing. I have to admit, it was an amazing stage. But you're right, the Tales had everything right. The saddest about Tales was that the CD didn't exist. Because we all agree, all of us, that if the CD had existed, then the 4 titles, one would have been about 8 minutes long, one probably would have been 14, one would have been about 10, and one would have been about 9 minutes long.
yeah.
But the problem was we extended them we shouldn't have done. And everybody agrees on that now. But the cover was phenomenal. You're right, it was a whole package with the stage and heaven knows what else.
Brian gave me a lot of stick about the tour merchandise. I mean, up until that point, the way it was done is that a bunch of guys with trucks load of pirated T-shirts would go and negotiate with Brian, and the first person to offer him $1,000 or above was allowed to park their truck nearest the venue. And it was that sophisticated. And I talked to the guys, you and the band, about doing coordinated merchandising, and Brian was furious. He said, "You're going to cost the band $39,000 because it won't sell and it'll cost a fortune, and I don't want to have anything to do with it." And I don't know if you know, but he didn't. The band or the record company, no one funded it. We put the money together and did all that outside of the band.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the two guys who came on the tour were, I think they worked for Harvey Goldsmith. And,
Harvey Goldmine.
and it was the first time tour merchandising had been done across the states in one way. And it was an amazing experience, and it did make money. But we didn't know how to do it. We were shipping in tons of paper into the States, which was insane. We did posters instead of T-shirts. We did everything wrong, but it still worked. And the reason we did the stage, is watching you guys play on the Yes Songs tour, bigger and bigger audiences, and seeing less and less of the band. Half the people wouldn't have known if the road crew picked up the instruments. You just were invisible. So the stage was some attempt to make a show of something that was becoming invisible. And it was a damn difficult piece of music, actually.
Yeah, it did have its moments, I must admit. I remember recording it. Did you come to any of the recording sessions at Morgan Studios? Because this is not a commonly known story. The difficulty was that two of us wanted to record in the country, get out of the city. That was John and myself. And two, Chris and Steve, wanted to record in the city, in London. So it was tour. Alan, as you know, bless him, always sat on the fence.
It was Bill, wasn't it?
No, Tales from Topographic Oceans was Alan.
No, Alan was on tour, but Bill was on the album.
No, he wasn't. That was Close to the Edge. Bill left after Close to the Edge. But Alan always sat on the fence and said, "Well, I think it'd be good to record in the city, but nice to go in the country as well." And that was Alan doing that. So it was tour. So we decided to compromise. We would record in the city, but make it look like we were in the country. And this is absolutely true. We recorded at Morgan Studios, and there's a guy called Monty Babson who was the boss at Morgan Studios, and I knew him well because I used to record there a lot. And I arrived down early on the very first morning, and Monty said, "Rick, come and have a coffee, I need to talk to you." So I said, "What is it, Monty?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "What about it?" He said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's been truckloads of stuff arrived this morning." I said, "Well, what, the gear, equipment?" He said, "No. Haystacks, fences, hedges, plants, trees." And they turned the studio. It was hilarious. Do you remember it? My keyboards were on little sort of piles of hay. I think it was absolutely hilarious. Steve had a cow. Not a real one, but he had like this huge model cow, and it had electric udders that went This is meant to be the psychedelic prog band, which everybody goes, wow, peace and love and all that. We've got a sodding cow with udders going. Yeah. Are we meant to have an interval?
Yeah.
Are we meant to have we're meant to, yes. Yeah. I'm just being told we're meant to have an interval. How's your prostate? Sorry? Oh, you want the story? Oh, yeah, you might need to go to the loo. Yeah, the old prostate, isn't it? You and I do this in a few years' time. There's only be about 6 minutes long each bit. Really. I was telling Tracy earlier, I had a guy in my band I call Hodgie, Ozzy Hodgson. And he didn't have a prostate problem, he just he used to drink an awful lot, stunning amount, we all did. And he could only go 2 hours between wheeze, which is a bit unfortunate because our set was 3 hours long. And he played tuned percussion and like vibraphones and things like that. And the only way he could do it was he used to hang a bucket on his vibes. And during the loud bits in Joint Centre of the Earth, he filled a bucket. And my crew had a wonderful crew, and they would do anything. And they all came to me and said, Rick, we'll do anything for you. We love you, we love the band, we love the music. But the one thing we're not going to do anymore is empty Hodgie's bucket. They said, that we're not doing it. So I went to Hodgie, I said, they won't empty your bucket. You'll have to do it. And he said, the road crew, it's their job to empty the bucket. And I said, well, they won't do it anymore. And he went, whoa. So he refused to empty it himself. So the crew drilled holes in the bucket. He emptied it after that. Brilliant it was. Anyway, go and have a wee. We'll see you in not that long. You all had a wee?
Have you?
4? Well, we're going to take over from where we left off, I suppose, aren't we, really?
Well, we're going to talk for a few minutes, and then we're going to do a question and answer.
This is dangerous, isn't it? Q&A. Oh, dear.
Once upon a time, somebody was talking about the symbology of my paintings, and I said, no, there's nothing like that in there. And the guy literally said to me, what do you know about it? You're just a fucking artist.
Serious?
Yeah, and I thought that was incredibly bad language, but actually, I kind of recognised what he meant. You know, it's someone else's job to put all the symbols and the mystical bits in it. I just did the painting.
You see, the interesting thing about a painting, for you, the same as music, for us, was when we were doing a piece of music, same as when I'm doing it, or we're doing it with Yes, the thing that we can't do, that everybody else can, is listen to it for the first time. Because we grow up with it, we watch it build, become what it is. We can't hear it for the first time. In the same way that with your paintings, you can't look at a finished painting in essence for the first time, because you've watched it develop and grow. Which is really quite interesting if you think about it.
Actually, the challenge of not seeing it for the first time, but seeing it differently, is a significant one, because you can't see the obvious errors unless you can distance yourself from that first step.
And that's an interesting point. And also, when Bill Bruford always used to say, work fits into time allotted. And when an album was finished, you know, we'd go away, we'd listen to the mixes, and we'd always all come back and say, oh, really should redo that little bit, really change that. And Bill used to, and he was quite good, say, no, we've finished it, it's done. That's the statement of the time, it's finished, it's done. We can fiddle around forever and ever and ever, and at the end of the day, if we keep fiddling around, it'll lose the magic that it's got in it. And it's interesting that Trevor Rabin and John, and Chris told me that you mentioned 90125 a while ago, and then Big Generator. And they said Big Generator suffered from exactly that. They went back and redid so many tracks, so many times, and remixed it so many times, that it lost the energy that it had when they first recorded it. So you can't. So do you accept when you look at the painting now? This is it. This is. I'm happy. This is the statement of what it is. Or would you always like to go back and fiddle?
I always go back and fiddle.
I thought you might.
I did get. I was once congratulated by a journalist, and he said, "I love that sense of space you get in your pictures. I mean, how do you get that?" I said, "Deadlines."
Yeah.
No time to fill it up. Given time to fill it up, you know, I'm of a mind to do very simple and spacious pictures, and then, like the one I did for you, every square inch is another story, and it's just layer on layer on layer, and I love that. I love that density. But going back to a thing, every painting I still have occasionally gets revisited. And my own view of it is perhaps too biased, but I always think it's an improvement. I change the name of my pictures too, you know. They're usually just called after whatever, you know, it was associated with the time. But gradually they acquire names, they acquire histories, they acquire a lot of other bits and pieces. And I do build stories into the pictures over time as well.
What's the biggest one you've ever painted? The biggest canvas was the biggest one you've ever, you know?
Anson Brew from Wakeman House. That was 9 foot by 6 foot.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was.
Where's the original of that? Where's that?
That's in San Francisco at the moment. It's in the gallery there. It was good fun working that size. I love working that size, but, you know, a major pain in the ass. Can I tell you one little anecdote about the back cover of that? Because it was exactly the same size. And a guy in New York bought it, and I was extremely grateful, but it's a 9 foot by 6 foot painting. And if you take the canvas up, the painting off the stretchers, its biggest dimension is 10 foot. So I had it in a tube, 10 foot by 18 inches across. And it was a heavy, cumbersome beast. Virgin, bless them, had no qualms about shipping it. So I flew to New York and arrived at Newark Airport. And they had these piddly little trolleys that weren't big enough for a suitcase. And out of the large luggage thing, I get this giant tube. I'm balancing it on this trolley, and I catch the eye of a customs officer. And he nods, and I head off towards him. And at the same time as our plane in, a plane came in from China and God knows where else. And the place is heaving with people. And as I'm just getting to this customs officer, this guy barges into me and jumps the queue. And this thing is falling over and I'm grabbing it and I'm trying to hold everything together. And another customs officer is just wandering around the shed, got his hand on his pistol. He came running up to me. He said, "Are you trying to kill somebody?" I said, "I've made up my mind, Jack. Give me time." But you know that was before 9/11. And he was fantastic. He did what you did. He smiled, took me right through customs, right down to the taxi rank, made them get me a van, sent me on his way. It was fantastic.
And then beat the shit out of you. I mean, it's funny with customs, man. You know, I mean, it's all changed now because of all the security and all the things. But there used to be an old rock and roll trick when you came back from tour. You know, because you knew, because you've got long hair and you're scruffy, that you're going to be pulled by customs. So the deal was, and most of the tours were 2 months old. So what you would do, yes, you would have your t-shirts laundered, and you would have your shirts laundered, but your underwear you didn't have laundered. So you keep your underwear and socks, and you put them in those plastic bags you get in the hotels, you know, for your laundry. And over a period of 2 months, as you fill them up, they would sweat quite a lot, and there would be. And then what you did it's true. All bands used to do it. On the day you came home, you would have all your clothes, your suitcase, and everything packed, and then you would empty this and lay it on the top, all your underwear that really stank. And then close the case, and you'd arrive at customs, and they go, "Over here, please. Do you want to open? Could you open? Yeah, no, please help yourself." They'd open it, and now it's been on an aeroplane as well, and they'd open it up and they go, "That seems to be perfectly normal." And away we go.
I got to tell you a story, Rick, which I hope you don't know. Remember when you had all those motors? And you
Yeah.
When Yes were on tour, they used to buy them off you, I guess.
They used to hire them, yeah.
Borrow them. My brother and I, Martin and I, were in Bristol, and there was a debate at the end of the concert. Were you going home? Were you staying? Blah, 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 blah. And we weren't sure what was going on, but a certain party, whose name, perhaps for the moment, should remain nameless, was heading back to town. And
What was the initials?
E.
Right, yeah, go on.
So
Yeah.
E had been experimenting in every substance known.
Yeah, I know when he took all tranquilizers.
Fairly bad
Right,
state.
yeah, it was in a really bad state. Got a great tip for Kempton Park, though. Sorry about that.
Roadie, driver, whatever, said, "Well, we're going back, we can give you a lift." So Martin and I were in the back of your roller, and there was a glass thing separating us, and in front was E. And he was in a terrible state, and it was getting worse by the minute. He was throwing up, and he was doing other unmentionable things. And the chap who was driving sort of opened the back, and he said, I think we better stop at a rest place and get somebody something to eat and set this stomach. And when he opened the window, I thought, Jesus Christ. And we pulled into a motorway cafe about halfway back to London. And, you know, you get whatever it is they sell, cup of tea, and you go to the table. But our good friend, our mutual friend, decided he wanted fried eggs. And he had, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 fried eggs on a plate. That's all he had. And it was 3 in the morning and the place was empty, except for this table of 4 policemen. And he couldn't be controlled. In fact, everyone else was sitting down miles away from these 4 policemen. He sat next to them. And he was picking his fried eggs up and trying to aim them at his mouth. And they escaped, they squirted out, they splattered. And he just didn't get a fraction of them into his mouth. And these policemen were doing their best so they didn't have to arrest him. You could tell, one thing they didn't want in their car.
Was that it? Oh, E. E. Was E. Oh, so what happened at the end?
They left.
They left and didn't want to arrest him.
I think Eddie had settled a bit, got taken home, we got taken home, that was the end of that.
Oh,
I expect your car got a jolly good washing afterwards.
Yeah, probably did actually. I didn't know that. There are so many stories that we just can't tell. But amazingly enough, we seem to have done so tonight, doesn't it? Well, this is a very dangerous level now. Questions? Anybody? Oh, your hand shot up rather quickly. There was a little bit of a worry there. Yeah.
Well, hopefully not too taxing.
Well, do you want to take this so that everybody can hear the...
Question to each of you. Do you have a favourite Yes album cover?
Well, it's not the bare arse, that's for sure. Yes, I think the Towers cover is brilliant, I must admit. It's hard to have a favourite because I just associate them very much with the albums. That's with the music that goes with them.
Or one that maybe sticks out.
One that sticks out.
Can I tell you my perspective of the Tales cover?
Yeah.
Because it's different to all the others.
It is, yeah. It's interesting.
We, Brian invited me to go with you guys to Tokyo in 1973, remember that?
I saw.
And he gave everybody...
I remember it well. Because it was very difficult for the Japanese.
And he gave us a big talk about no drugs in Japan.
No drugs. No drugs.
And all the ladies made a cake, a goodbye cake for the band.
I saw.
My recollection of this cake is the plane was empty. I don't suppose you remember any particular plane, but that flight was empty. And John was taking big chunks of cake around to everybody, and I've got a sweet tooth, I just ate it. And what was in that cake is nobody's business. But it wasn't just fruit and nuts.
Well, you arrived 3 hours before the plane, didn't you? It was great, Japan. It was wonderful, wasn't it? Because, as you know, the Japanese have great difficulty getting their tongue around their R's. And I always remember the first time we went, when Mr. Udo, do you remember Mr. Udo?
Udo-san,
Udo-san, yeah, it's 88 now, Udo-san. And he met us for the first time. So hello, yes, hello. And he looked at me and he said, you? And I said, Rick. He went, Rick. Hello, Rick. And then Steve, Steve, he likes Steve. Chris, Cliss, hello, Cliss. And then he took Brian and you said, Brian Lane. He went, oh, bloody hell. Brian Ray. Right. I love Japan. I love going to Japan. It's brilliant. Yeah, so you still haven't told us your favourite cover. I've said I like to. Tales was different. The inside of Close to the Edge is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And that is it's such an amazing surprise to open that cover and see that. It is not what you expect. It's great. So that would be my favourite inside. What about you? You still haven't answered.
I like Tales, but I think Relay,
Yeah, the Muddy Water one.
the Muddy Water one.
Yeah.
I never finished. Let me just quick summary. I spent the whole flight to Anchorage to Gaga to say a word, but unfortunately in Anchorage it kicked in, and I just finished a book on geomancy. I did a cover for a guy called John Michel, and as we were flying hour after hour after hour over Siberia, I was sitting next to John and telling him all about magic in the landscape, all kinds of garbage. And he listened very patiently. Anyway, that was my take on where it all came from.
And next, yes.
It's a comment more on the question, is to get my own back on you, because you were taking the mickey out of Eastbourne, and I saw you. I just remembered I saw you in Eastbourne about 12 years ago in a small theatre.
I did a small
I
theatre.
thought, what was your thinking there? Who do you think, what audience did
We
you
would.
think you
That was a
replacing?
theatre. It was actually council were trying to close it.
Yeah?
They were trying to close that theatre, so a lot of us sort of went down to try and sort of save it. I mean, Eastbourne actually, I've got some very good friends in Eastbourne. It's sort of it's changed a lot, hasn't it? In all seriousness, over the last few years, it's changed an awful lot. But there was two theatres in Eastbourne. They were both going to close, and there's a whole group of us were involved with trying to stop theatres being closed. So we all went down there to do that. So no, I have a soft spot for Eastbourne, I have to say. Next, anyone? Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hate to make it kind of serious, but Rick, this rumour has it that you're doing a couple of nights in Gloucester next year, and you're doing a couple of very important pieces on those nights. Could you give us any more information about what's going to happen?
Gloucester, yeah. I got approached by some people in Gloucester, all to do with the Gloucester Council. They do a thing every year called the Gloucester Mystery Plays, which they do in there. It's basically it's their whole arts week, and which runs for about arts fortnight really. They do lots of things, and they wanted to do some concerts that had sort of all sorts of acting and other bits and pieces go on. So they came to me and asked if I would do King Arthur again. So with the symphony orchestra and choir and band and cast of millions and people jousting and maidens getting pillaged and things, and I said I could help them out there, and so we put that in. I think it's July the 15th next year. So that's all up and done and ready to go. And then they came back to me and said, "You've just redone Journey to the Centre of the Earth," haven't you? I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we've got the orchestra sitting there, and we can't take the stage down on Monday morning. Why don't you do the Sunday as well?" So we're going to do Arthur on the Saturday and then Journey on the Sunday, which will be great fun with the orchestra and choir. Not been done for... The Journey hasn't been done for, crikey, 30 plus years, because all the music went missing. So we've got that all back now. And we're only doing 2 performances next year, one at Gloucester and the other one in Kew Gardens in September.
Can you play some?
Sorry?
Can you play some?
It's me, the band, the orchestra, the full symphony orchestra, the English chamber choir, 2 vocalists and a narrator. And I've got the school piano.
Improvise.
So to be honest, you'll have to come to Gloucester for that one. I'll play something else in a minute, but I can't do that. And for the album, we've got a special coming out with future publishing of Journey. But I'm over the moon that for the full album release, which is in February, a certain Mr. Dean will be doing what will become his favourite painting of all time. Is that not correct?
Absolutely.
Next question. Yes.
Roger, we've heard the story about how you did the last in this series of Yes Songs paintings, and you put the picture down on the studio floor to dry, and the cat walked across it and left his paw prints across the sky, and you can still make it out in the album cover. My question is, did the cat survive?
For about an hour.
Was it your cat or?
Yeah, it was my cat. Yeah.
I didn't know you had a cat.
What you don't know is that I tried to paint them out and I couldn't, and I had to get it photographed, and there they were. But by the time I got back from getting it photographed and I put the painting against the wall, the cat added insult to injury by spraying on it.
Had it heard the album?
No, it was before the album was recorded. No, it was live.
I've got 3 cats. We for my sins, my wife and I, we collect rescue cats. And there's one that comes in the studio called Harry, he's ginger and white, named after Prince Harry because he's ginger and white. And Harry comes into the studio and he will insist on spraying up my engineer's legs while he's recording. It's funny when they do that, don't they?
No.
So your cat, what's your cat called?
This cat was the one that did the spraying was called Blitzen.
You haven't got a Donna as well, have you?
We did, yeah.
Did you really? And Blitzen up the old. Oh, that's wonderful. Next. Yes.
Possibilities of an album next year with John and Trevor Raven and a cover by Mr. Dean?
Very strong. It's very. I mean, we're sending bits of music backwards and forwards to each other all the time. The difficulty is, and we've decided we're not going to say, oh, we've got to get it done by this time. We've got to get it done by this time. We're going to do it as we go. Oh, great! That piece of music we're really happy with. Yeah, we can play with that. And once we've got it all together, then we can do it. Trev is always busy doing films and whatever. John is always busy, and I'm busy. So we're doing it. I won't say in downtime. We're still sending stuff to each other all the time, and it will happen. There is no doubt about it. It will happen. Trev came over to London, just a few months ago, and we had lunch and went through it all. He's met with John, and we sent stuff flying back and forth. It's something that we always wanted to do, and it will happen. And with his cover too. No bare asses on that one. unless it's yours, Roger, of course. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? You have one of your great colours, and then there's your arse right in the middle.
I don't think you could stand the fame.
Yes.
Yes, hello. As a comment first, the older you get, the more attractive Eastbourne becomes. Because it looks like the old Brighton.
Yeah.
And perhaps a serious question for Roger. I really like your opinion as a true artist. I'd like to know what your opinion is of modern arts and
What was it? Yeah. I don't think everybody heard the question, so do you want to repeat what that was?
You asked me what I thought about modern art. Just quickly before I go there, music had its same era of strangeness. You know, John Cage did 23 Minutes of Silence on the piano, and Terry Riley.
It's been so strange. Cornelius Cardew, all those guys.
The thing is, though, starting really with the Beatles, they took all that stuff and put it into pop songs. So the avant-garde of music really was introduced to the world in a way that was interesting and entertaining. The avant-garde of art really has been frozen in time for nearly 100 years. It's nearly 100 years since Duchamp signed Our Mutt on porcelain. urinal. And the trouble with modern art is it's so fucking old-fashioned. Sorry, it's just desperate.
I do like visiting galleries. We go a lot, Rachel and I, because Rach did art at Leeds. That's what she did. She did fine art, and we go to a lot. We recently went to the Modern Gallery in Paris, and I've never seen such a pile of junk in my entire life. And you just we went for a coffee afterwards, and he says, I'm going to get shot for this, I know, but I equated it to a lot of avant-garde, very modern jazz, which is basically an art form that's probably done by some people who do have some talent, but on the music side of things, it's people who've got a technical talent but can't write a tune. And with the modern art, we came to the conclusion that it's probably people who do have an imagination but don't know quite how to put it into a way that actually you could genuinely say is art. Does that sort of make an ounce of sense to you?
I think the real tragedy of art is the separation of craft from the creative process, and I think that's been a disaster.
There you go. That's lowered the tone, isn't it? Next! There was somebody else.
Are you going to play us a tune?
Yeah, I'll play a tune in a minute after this. Yeah.
Can I just ask, what music has inspired you over the years? Apart from your own, that is.
In a strange way, it is a difficult one to answer because sometimes you don't know what inspires you. I think your brain stores stuff that it hears and which influences you along the way. I mean, from a young lad, my father, I remember the first thing that really struck me. My father took me to see, I think it was at Ealing Town Hall. It was a freebie concert. It was Peter and the Wolf, Prokofie's Peter and the Wolf. And I just thought how wonderful. I was enthralled that somebody could tell a story to music. And it was always what I wanted to do. I just thought how wonderful is that. And Eastern European composers then became, well, they still are to me. I mean, I've been very lucky. I went over to Eastern Europe way before the Berlin Wall and that came down. So I wanted to see the places where some of these composers worked. I mean, I was very lucky to do loads and loads of sessions for different people, so you pick up good points and bad points. And no doubt about it, in the studio, there's nobody I ever worked with who was better than Bowie. David was just brilliant in the studio. He never wasted a second. He knew exactly how things were going to be. And I learnt more from him and from people like Tony Visconti and Gus Dudgeon and Denny Cordell and those kind of people. It's hard to say. I've never knowingly, although there's only 12 notes to play with, never knowingly sort of tried to ape or copy anything that anybody's done. Orchestration-wise, when I do my own orchestrations, which I did like for that album, for the Return album, a few other things, yeah, you are influenced, and all my influences were Eastern European, because when I was at Royal College, my orchestration professor, Philip Cannon, my very first lesson, he just wrote on a piece of paper, he said, go and buy this book, which was called Art and Principles of Orchestration by Rimsky-Korsakov. He said, when you've read it, come back. And that became my Bible for everything on how to do my orchestrations, because Eastern Europeans do it completely different to how we do. So I probably have got lots and lots and lots of influences, but I can't nail them down and say that's what it is, because I think things go into your head. Same with writers, and I'm sure the same with artists and painters and sculptors. You might not deliberately do so, but your brain is storing things. Go, oh, that's pretty good, whatever. So yeah. On the other side of things, music side of things, I mean, I've played with some great musicians and things, but studio-wise, certainly David was a cut above the rest. Very clever guy. And Clive Dunn. I did the follow-up to Grandad, which was a total disaster. Grandma, You're Still Alive or something. It was called. Bloody awful it was. My God, I played on some junk. I played on the Bicycle Bell. Remember the Bicycle Bell record? My God, that was a enthralling day, that was. Sorry, next. And then I'll play something. Yes?
Sorry to ask the obvious question, Rick. Rumours abound, as always, of yourself and John getting back together with Yes. Can you tell us anything that might possibly happen in the future?
My God, there's another pig flying by there. No. Well, I can't speak for John. But for me, it was quite interesting. When I went back in 2002 to 2005, the band was playing the best I can ever remember from when I was part of the band. There's about 14 years in total I was with the band. It was just amazing. It was a bit like, I don't know, a Premiership football team where all the players had just reached maturity at the right time or were playing the best. It was amazing. Everything that we played right up until 2005, I just thought, we can't. It's not possible to better this. We were basically playing some things like Wakeman and some of the other pieces better than we had done, on the record, which is just almost unheard of. And when John was ill in 2005, and we all spoke, and the lads wanted to go out, and I said, I don't want to go out without John. For me, and I don't want to get into discussions, but for me, in the same way you can't have Led Zeppelin without Robert Plant, you can't have The Who without Roger Daltrey. For me, you cannot have Yes without John singing. And so, thank you, Mum. And and it was just my. And I said, I don't want to be. I feel that it's, for me, it would be disrespectful for Yes Music and to John at Yes if that was the case. So I stepped back. Chris said to me at that particular time, if you won't do it, who do you recommend to do it? And that's when I recommended Oliver, because Oliver, my son, because he'd worked with Steve. So it was just purely how I felt on all of that. The interesting thing is that I've thought long and hard about it since then, the whole situation, especially doing 3 tours with John and doing the albums together and discussing other things. And I came to the conclusion a little while ago that I don't think that there is any possible way that the old classic lineup, whatever you want to call it, could ever play as well as it did in that period of time, because the timing was right, everything was absolutely right about that. We weren't rushing in to make an album. We never made an album. We played for 3 years, and that's what we concentrated on. And I think, in fact, I know that the band could not play as well, and I don't really want to do. They always say with professional football, the ideal thing to do is to quit when you're at the top, and most don't. I have got such fond memories of those 3.5 years, because the band, you've got to understand, I'm a fan as well as being in the band, so I can say as a fan, the band was magnificent during those 3.5 years, and I would never want to go back to something that would be lesser, and there's no doubt about it, it would be. So the simple answer, I can't speak for John, but for me, 2005, that was a wave goodbye, which probably wouldn't have happened if John hadn't have been ill, but it was a wave goodbye. But I'm very proud of those last few years, and I'm proud when I look back at some of the film footage and listen to some of the live recordings. I know that was the right decision for me. So
just to clarify, you're talking about the Keys to Ascension session?
No, we're going. That was '97.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about 2002, 2005. That was the live performances. We didn't do any new recordings during that particular period of time. We only did the sort of live recordings. That was all.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Well, very quiet. Shall I play some of it?
Yeah.
I'll play some. We were talking about John, and John and I, we were down in you mentioned the Beatles earlier, obviously with George Martin, who played enormous part in what they did. And I think, I know George very well, he's a good mate. One of the things that he told me, which was great about all of the guys, especially Paul and John, was when they got a piece of music, they would leave him alone to play with it. They understood exactly what he was going to do with the music. And George Martin had his studios down in Montserrat, which actually got destroyed, of course, when the volcano erupted. And we recorded an Anderson Brew for Wakeman How down there. Did you come down to Montserrat? Did you come? Oh, you should know. It was brilliant. Very funny things happened down there, because one of the things, very quickly, just changes something fractionally, then you'll have to remind me what the hell I was talking about. It was a real Caribbean island, the island down there, and there was a church, a big church close by to the studios, and it was fantastic on Sundays. Or it was quite interesting because all the women who, got to be careful I don't get called fatties, all tended to be quite large and all with these enormous hats and big colourful dresses. They used to drop their husbands at what they call the rum bars. So the husbands were there to get legless, and they would go to church. And a few of the guys and that would go. And John and I fancied going. So John and I, this particular Sunday, went up to this church, and it's packed with all these wonderful Caribbean women and guys all with their big hats and things. And the band, they had, it was like a soul band with two Hammond organists and a guitarist and a preacher who sung, and it was all the whole full bit. And it was absolutely amazing with all the singing and things. And then halfway through, the preacher went, "We have two friends amongst us, two friends who have come to see us. Please welcome our two friends." And suddenly we were thrust upon by all of these, a couple of hundred of them. And I remember John, because he's quite small, John, as you know, getting totally lost in this rather large lady's bosom. In fact, he disappeared completely, actually, for about 10 minutes. But it was just amazing. And at the end of it, everybody sort of sat down and things. And we came out, and I said to the preacher, I said, "I tell you what," I said, "was very impressive was the fact that not only was it just great with all the music and everything, but that you actually spotted that John and I were two strangers in your midst." He said, "You're the only two white guys ever been to this church." We went, "Oh, brilliant." And that was, do you remember Props? Who was Bill Bruford's roadie? Well, there was a lot of American servicemen in their jeeps on the island, a lot of American servicemen. And Props was giving me a lift into the town. And we pulled up at these traffic lights, and there's an big American GI with a very beautiful lady next to him. And Props wound down the window, and he said, "Excuse me." I go, "Yeah." He said, "Can I have a go on your girlfriend?" He chased us all round the island. I was cracking myself. Anyway, so what were we talking about? Montserrat. Oh, Air Studios, Montserrat. What was the question? Sorry, I can't remember now. What was it? Talking about Air Studios. We're talking about George. Any idea? What was the question? I was going to play something, wasn't I? Oh yes, good spotting. That's right. And it was one evening, and it was about, we'd had dinner, and John and I had gone for a walk. We'd talking about music and various things, and we were talking about instant music. Is there such a thing as instant music? And we got back to Montserrat. We were sitting by the pool having a coffee. It was about 2 a.m, and the studio was open. And we were talking, as I said, we were talking about instant music. And John said, "Shall we see if we can do some instant music?" And I said, "Okay, well, how will we know if it's any good?" And he said, "Well, what we'll do, we'll go in." He said, there was a cartridge table, so everything's switched on, we can just record something. And then we'll come in tomorrow, we'll have a listen, and in the cold light of day, if it's any good, we can re-record it or do it. So we went in, and I sat at the piano. John sat on, I can sit to this day, John sat in the store. We put the quarter inch on, everything was all mic'd up because it was all ready to work every day. And we played this piece, and we finished it. And it was really ridiculous. I just played and John just sang. And at the end, John said, "That was good, wasn't it?" And I said, "Well, I think so. Shall we have a listen back?" We went, "No, we'll listen in the morning." Listen in the morning. And we did. We came in the morning before anybody else came in, and we played it. And we both looked at it and we said, "Well, let's play it to the other guys, see what they think." We played it to Bill, and Bill said, "It's beautiful." And it was a song called The Meeting, which we did. And then we decided, well, okay, we'll record it properly. But we never did it as well as that one time that we done. So that was what you hear on the record is what we actually originally did, because it was so spontaneous that it had a sort of an energy and a life that you couldn't do by shall we say, I won't say try and do it properly, because there wasn't any mistakes in it, because it was what it was. So, in memory of Mr. George Martin and my good friend John and the wonderful time we had in Montserrat, I'll do The Meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the Starway 9-foot ground.
Oh, sorry, you're going to put some pictures up?
Absolutely.
Okay. Shall I wait for you or shall I start?
You just start.
Okay.
Before we just all close it all up, any more questions? Yes.
Do you have a favourite piece of Yes music you like, please?
Yeah, Wakeman. I think Wakeman it was an interesting piece. More I look back on it, and I mean, John and I both agree. When anybody ever asks me what the definition of prog rock is or orchestral rock, and then I always point towards Wakeman. I think it had every ingredient without being over the top. Because certainly, you know, it happens with everything. Some bits of prog, some bits of Yes, some bits of you try too hard on certain things. But Awaken was just such a natural growth of a piece of music. So that is, I mean, there's lots of other Yes pieces that I love a lot, but Awaken is something very special. You got a favourite Yes piece?
I would say Awaken is up there. As I said earlier, it's in the top three. I like Soon, actually, strangely.
Soon's a very beautiful song, yeah.
And a weird one I quite like, From the Balcony. Close to the Edge.
There's some interesting things. I mean, I've often said if I could get hold of the tapes, I'd love to remix the Tomato album, because Arriving UFO is a classic track, it's just a crap mix.
I've got to tell you a description of one of Yes's songs, which I love. I wish it was an album title. I went to see Yes in Anaheim with a friend. That same time.
Oh yeah. I forgot you got a friend, haven't you? Yeah.
Well, I did anyway.
Yeah.
And he had a new lady friend who was coming across Yes for the first time.
Would you like to rephrase that? I think that's an unfortunate
I'm just going to get on with this.
you came out earlier in the first half, and now.
Afterwards, he was basically saying, "And what did you think about Yes?" Everyone a little bit cautious, because it's the operas often find Yes harder. Anyway,
You're not doing too well here.
she said she loved the song about the mammals. And everyone started, mammals? What's the song about the mammals?
Don't kill the whale, was that?
She said, well, everyone don't kill the whale.
Yeah.
No, she said, no, the one about the mammals. No one could get it. You said, come on, it goes, mammals, they come out of the sky and just stand there.
Oh, brilliant. Ah. Yeah.
That for me would be the title, I think.
One last one from anybody? Yes.
Well, it's for both of you, really. Two-parter. Desert Island Discs.
Yes.
What's your Desert Island disc and what's your luxury?
Wow. That's
You were wrong, that.
sorry. Do you know what I've done? Desert Island Discs in Canada. They do it in America. I've done it in Africa. I've done it in Australia, but I've never done it in the UK. Probably terrified to have me on. Gosh, what was your main disc that you would take? What would be your disc? Any idea?
God, there's a hard one.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I have
Gosh.
different lists for different types of music.
Yeah, you can only take one thing with you there.
Desert Island Disc was invented before iPod, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, but I mean,
It doesn't work anymore.
well, you can actually take, is it 8 records with you, isn't
You
it?
can take 8, but you're only allowed to keep 1.
You're quite right. What would I take? I'd have to take Peter and the Wolf. I'd have to take Peter and the Wolf because it encompasses everything. As I say, the music telling its story. And what about you, Rog?
I'll try and... I can't think of one type of music. For rock and roll, I definitely have an Elvis one, and
I saw him earlier today.
Led Zeppelin, When the Levee Breaks, and Awaken, I think.
You see, he wants to take his iPod. What about your luxury?
You know, when we had a publishing company, I thought what you need to do, there's a scene actually in Time Machine, H.G. Wells' Time Machine, where at the end of the book, he's come back and gone, and they're looking in the library and 3 books are missing. And I figured something like that triggered the idea for this. But I did think it might be interesting to think, if you're going to start a civilization from scratch, what would the book be?
What would the book be? Kama Sutra? Well, if you only take one page, might I suggest 57? It hurts, but boy is it worth it. So what would your luxury be? Come on. Well, mine's easier. I'd take a piano, but not that one. Surely it would be, put it crudely, a paint box or so, wouldn't it? Have to be, surely.
I guess. Yeah, blank book.
There you go. So you can paint on the desert island. You and I were stuck on the desert island. You can paint. I'll play the piano, and trust me, that's as far as it will go. I'll say thank you very much to everybody. It's been really kind. This has been great because we quite literally, Roger and I, we spoke on the phone about it, and we decided that we weren't going to plan anything because it'd be much more interesting if, as I said right at the beginning, it was almost like we were meeting and having chats over lunch because things are going to come out, if you'll pardon the expression, that wouldn't normally happen. I think if we'd have planned, we'll talk about this and talk about that, this would never have happened. It'd probably be completely different again tomorrow night.
Yeah. In fact, we did think of 1 or 2 things. You said, ask me that.
But
Well,
you didn't.
don't say that.
And we didn't, and you said the same, and we didn't.
No.
Did we? Right, so we will never know quite what you look like naked. No.
I still hold some mystery there.
Yes. Thank you ever so much for those of you who come in tomorrow night. You'll hear a load of different things, and thank you very much indeed. And if you're heading any way back towards Norfolk, please hang on for half an hour so I get a head start on you. Thank you very much. God bless. Thanks a lot. silly. I'll do something silly just to finish on. Nothing to do with yes. This is a little piece. Michael told me and Raj said, if you're coming down here to this neck of the woods, they're very, very intellectual. Unbelievably intellectual. So if a chance, just play something intellectual if you get the chance. So this is a little intellectual piece that I don't do very often. It's lovingly called the Nursery Rhyme Concerto. It's very simple. What it is a series of nursery rhymes done in the style of well-known composers. And I never usually bother to tell people what the nursery rhymes are or the composers because it's so blatantly obvious. And I played in Dublin. It was a nightmare. All I could hear throughout the entire piece was, is that little hickory dickory dock with the pussy up the way there? Is that what I'm listening to? So I thought tonight the easiest thing to do is to tell you what the nursery rhymes are and the composers. So at least you can sit there and go, yeah, I know who that is. So I'm trying to think what I'll do. I will start with Bar Bar Black Sheep in the style of Mozart. That's Wolfgang Amadeus, of course. Then we'll have Hickory Dickory Dock in the style of Ravel. That's Maurice Ravel of Bolero fame. Then Three Blind Mice in the style of Debussy. Excuse me, the wonderful Claude Debussy. Then we could have Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in the style of Dawson. That's Les. Now I wanted to get an English composer in, and he's the only one I like. So and then finally we'll do Pop Goes the Weasel in the style of Sergei Rachmaninoff. Bloody glad you came now.